The galaxy was a quiet place for a long time. The Concord ruled the stars peacefully. It was a council made up of many alien species. They had trade, diplomacy, and order. War was rare. On the far edge of Concord space, there was a small mining colony. It sat on a lonely moon orbiting a dead world. The workers there lived simple lives. They dug deep into the rock, pulling out rare minerals for Concord's ships. Then one day, the silence broke. A signal came from the mining colony. It was sharp, broken, and filled with static. The only clear word was heard by listening posts across the sector. Human. Then nothing, no more contact. No answers, just silence. The Concord responded quickly. They sent patrol drones first. The drones arrived and found only wreckage. The mining camp was gone. No bodies, no ships. Only a blackened crater and the remains of melted steel. The images were shown to the Concord Council. They sat in a great chamber floating in orbit above the planet Zalari. The chamber was filled with alien voices. Each species spoke with fear. Who were these humans? Why had they attacked? What did they want? Most of the council had never heard of humans before. One species, the Drulkin, said they remembered something from long ago. A report from a deep space probe. It had seen a blue planet far beyond Concord. Charts. The planet had large cities and strange satellites. But no one had gone to check. It was considered too far, too wild. Now that planet had sent something, and it had wiped out a Concord colony in moments. Commander Urel of the Trelawney stood before the council. She had served in the outer sectors for over 30 years. She was tall, with scales like polished stone and eyes like dark water. She requested permission to take a diplomatic ship to investigate. The council agreed. Urel took her ship, the Seralis, toward the mining moon. She brought a small team of diplomats and science officers. When they arrived, the wreckage was still warm. Scanners showed strange radiation patterns, unknown weapon signatures, orbiting the moon, hidden in shadow. They saw something, a ship. It was massive. Dark as night and silent, no Concord design matched its shape. It had sharp lines and thick armor. A single symbol marked its hull. A red eagle wrapped around a blue globe. They tried to contact it. Urel sent out a peaceful message. She spoke in over 20 common languages. The ship stayed quiet for a long time. Then a voice came through the channel. It was deep, clear, and human. "This is Captain Ryan Brooks of Earth Defense Command. Identify yourselves. State your purpose." Urel felt a chill run down her spine. The voice was not angry. It was calm, controlled. But it carried the weight of power. She responded with greetings from the Concord. She said they were here in peace. She asked what happened to the colony. Captain Brooks answered with silence at first. Then, "Your people fired first," we answered. "We will defend ourselves. We do not seek war, but we are not afraid of it." Yarl asked what Earth wanted. Brooks replied, "Respect and space to grow, nothing more, unless more is forced upon us." The channel closed. The large ship slowly turned away from the moon. Its engines glowed blue and white. It disappeared into the stars. The crew of the Serali stood in silence. Urel ordered a full scan of the area. They took samples of the melted rock. They measured the radiation. It was clear. This ship had weapons unlike anything the Concord had ever seen. When they returned to the council, Urel spoke firmly. "We have met the humans. They are not what we expected. They are not wild. They are not weak. They are something else entirely, and they are watching us." The chamber grew silent. The stars outside continued to shine. But now, the galaxy was no longer quiet. The whisper in the void had become a voice. And that voice belonged to humanity. The Seralis moved through deep space, its silver hull reflecting the light of distant stars. Commander Urel sat in the observation room, looking at the empty blackness. She had not slept since the message from Captain Ryan Brooks. His voice still echoed in her mind. "We do not seek war, but we are not afraid of it." That single sentence held more power than most fleets. She had dealt with many species before. Some arrogant, some wise, But none had spoken like the humans. They were calm, they were prepared, and they were very dangerous. A week later, the Concorde sent more ships, not warships but science and diplomatic cruisers. The Concorde wanted to understand what had arrived in their part of space. They wanted to learn more before deciding what to do. The Suralis was ordered to remain in orbit around the mining moon. A research team arrived on the ship Clarion. It was led by Dr. Farrell, a Kalari biologist with 5 arms and glowing green eyes. He believed the humans might be misunderstood explorers. Perhaps, he said, they only acted in fear. We must not provoke them further. Others were not so kind. Ambassador Kell from the Dren believed humans should be confronted. We cannot allow unknown powers to move unchecked. We must test their strength, Jarl warned him. They already showed us what they can do. Testing them might be the last test we ever give. But Kell did not listen. 2 days later, without permission, Kell took a fast scout ship and approached human space. He sent a direct message to the coordinates where the strange ship had last been seen, to the vessel identifying as Earth Defense Command. You are trespassing in Concorde territory. You must surrender your ship for investigation. For hours there was no response. Then something appeared on the long-range scans. A signature, massive, moving faster than expected. The Everest. It did not sneak. It did not hide. It entered the sector openly. Like a predator entering a forest, Ambassador Kell's ship turned to flee. But before he could even engage his engines, the Everest sent a message. It was short. Do not run. You wanted our attention. Now you have it. The scout ship was not destroyed, but it was caught in a strange field, some kind of energy locked. Its engines held it still, not harming it, just showing control. The Concorde fleet scrambled. 10 ships formed a defensive ring near the edge of the system. Jarl watched from her command post. She begged the council to wait, to speak. But fear had already taken root. The Everest moved slowly. It came into view from behind the moon. Everyone on the Suralis fell silent. The ship was unlike anything they had seen. Long, dark, brutal, covered in armor, covered in scars. It stopped just outside the defensive ring. Then, a signal opened. To the Concorde, this is Captain Ryan Brooks. We do not recognize your authority over this region. Your ambassador threatened us. We responded with restraint, but we will not be threatened again. Jarl answered the message herself. Captain Brooks, please understand Ambassador Kell does not speak for all of us. Many in the Concorde wish for peace. We wish to understand you, not to fight you. There was a long pause. Then Brooks replied, understanding is earned, trust is built. We are open to talks, but make no mistake, we will not be bullied. Not again, not ever. The words were sharp. But they also gave hope. Jarl offered a meeting. She would bring a delegation aboard the Everest. Brooks accepted, but with a warning. Come unarmed, come honest, or do not come at all. The council voted, narrowly, to allow the meeting, and so for the first time in history, a Concorde delegation prepared to step onto a human warship. A ship that had destroyed a colony stopped. A fleet, and now was waiting, waiting to speak, waiting to be understood, waiting to see if the galaxy was ready for humanity. Long before the Everest reached the stars, Earth was burning. 20 years ago. The skies turned red over New York. The oceans boiled near Tokyo. Cities vanished in fire across every continent. The enemy came without warning. They called themselves the Shelver. They came in silver blades of war, falling from the sky like metal rain. They said humans were a mistake, a noise in the quiet of the stars. At first, no one believed it. The attack on Mars was seen as an accident. Then the moon base went silent. When they hit Earth, there was no more doubt. The United Nations fell apart within a week. Every country looked to its own defense. But the Shelver were too fast, too strong, too advanced in Chicago. People watched as the sky opened and a beam of white heat tore through the skyline. In Cairo, drones filled the sky like insects, burning everything below. Then came Admiral Linda Matthews. She had once commanded only naval fleets. Now she was asked to lead something much larger, the Earth Defense Command. Matthews was calm, focused, and very angry. She saw that fighting back separately would only lead to extinction. She called for unity, not with speeches, but with orders. She took over Earth's remaining orbital defenses. She brought together engineers from Berlin, Sao Paulo, Mumbai, and Johannesburg. She turned abandoned stations into command centers, and she gave a single order that changed everything. "We will not die here. Build me something that can fight back. Build me something that will make the stars remember us." And so, Project Everest was born. The first time the idea was spoken aloud, people laughed. A battleship the size of a city. Impossible madness, but Admiral Matthews did not stop. She gave everything she had. She pulled resources from underground bunkers and hidden black-budget labs. She found people who had built weapons in secret, scientists who were told their dreams were too dangerous. They all came together in orbit above Saturn. A ring of steel began to grow. They worked in silence, surrounded by the frozen rings and silent moons. No news was allowed to leak. No broadcasts were made. The Shalver would not know until it was too late. The ship was named Everest because it was a mountain of war. It had a spine of neutron-forged steel, and its hull was covered in living metal that healed itself. Instead of nuclear power, it ran on dark matter fusion. Its railguns could tear a ship in half from a moon away. And its crew, hand-picked, trained to survive in the worst of conditions. Elijah Carter, the lead pilot, had once landed a broken shuttle in the middle of a storm on Titan. Naomi Brooks, the chief engineer, had built the engine core with her own hands. Every crew member had seen war, lost family, lost homes. They carried Earth's pain and its hope. The final systems were installed the same week the Shalver reached Earth orbit. 10 massive ships surrounded the planet. They demanded surrender. Admiral Matthews gave them silence. From behind the rings of Saturn, the Everest emerged. The Shalver never saw it coming. The first blast from the Everest's primary cannon tore through 2 enemy ships. The second wave of missiles confused the rest. The third volley ended the siege. In 22 minutes, humanity turned the tide. The world watched from bunkers and broken cities. They saw the Shalver run. They saw the Everest rise. But Admiral Matthews did not stop there. She ordered the Everest to pursue. "They came to erase us. Now we make sure they never return." The ship jumped into deep space. The enemy was hunted. Every Shalver outpost found was destroyed, not in hatred, but in survival in time. The Shalver vanished, faded into the black. And Earth was left alone. But Earth had changed. It no longer waited. It no longer hoped the stars would be kind. The Everest became a symbol, not of conquest, but of warning. The ship stayed in space, always moving, always watching, ready to return if Earth was ever threatened again. And so the galaxy slept for a while, until the humans returned and the stars learned that Earth remembers everything. The Everest was not just a ship, it was a promise. After the war with the Shalver, Earth stood in silence. Cities were rebuilding, skies were clearer, but everyone knew peace was fragile. It could break again any moment, so while the world healed, the Everest remained. Not at Earth, but far away, hidden. It stayed near a dark gas giant called Nereus. The planet had no moons, no light, only storms and silence, there, in the shadows. The Everest became more than a warship. It became something new. Naomi Brooks stood in the engine room, her hands covered in grease, her eyes watching readouts on glowing screens. The ship had survived the Shalver, but that was only the beginning. "The systems are too slow," she muttered. "We need better response time in hostile zones." She wasn't alone. Teams worked around the clock. Engineers from old nations, programmers who once built artificial minds for medical ships. Now they built them for battle. They upgraded the hull with alloy mine from dead stars. They installed new reactors, faster drives, smarter defenses. The living metal skin learned from each battle. It adapted, changed shape, strengthened where it had been weak. Elijah Carter trained new pilots in a zero-G chamber. You don't fly the Everest like a ship. You fly it like a storm. You lean into gravity. You trust the hull. You let it feel space around you. He had a calm voice. Steady hands, but inside he carried fire. His sister had died during the Shalvar invasion. He never forgot. And he made sure his crew never did either. Each room on the Everest had a plaque, a name, a face. Someone lost, someone remembered, Admiral. Matthews called it the soul of the ship. She said the Everest had to be more than metal. It had to be a memory, while the outside galaxy calmed down. Earth prepared. New defense stations were built near Pluto. Scouting drones mapped nearby systems. But the Everest went farther. Captain Ryan Brooks took command 5 years after the First War. He was not loud, he was not famous, but he understood the mission. We are not explorers. We are not conquerors. We are guardians. We move first. We protect the silence, so no one else suffers like we did. Under his command, the Everest vanished from Earth maps. Only High Command knew where it went. It would appear sometimes near the edge of human colonies. Stay for a day, then leave. Children made stories about it. Miners called it the Watcher. Merchants claimed to see its shadow in asteroid fields. The Everest also began testing new systems. One was the Tempest Protocol, a full combat sequence designed to defend against a multi-fleet ambush. It could activate every weapon system in less than 4 seconds. All cannons, all drones, all shields. But it was not just weapons. The crew studied alien language files recovered from old ruins. They learned about other civilizations. Not all were peaceful. Some were forgotten threats waiting in the dark. Brooks believed they had to prepare for more than just war. They had to prepare for discovery. The Everest was upgraded again. Now it could fold space faster, disappear from scans, launch observation satellites in seconds. It became a ghost, a shadow with teeth, one day. While testing engines near the edge of human space, they picked up a signal. A Concord mining colony, no identification, just a call for help. Brooks watched the signal. It wasn't directed at Earth, but he knew what it meant. Something had changed. Humanity had stepped into the galaxy, and now, the galaxy had noticed. He gave the order. We move, we answer, we remind them who we are. Everest turned from Nereus. Its engines flared blue. And once again, the stars watched. The battleship was coming, and this time, it was not alone. Because behind it, humanity was awake, ready, and unafraid. The stars were quiet as the Everest entered the sector. It did not hide. It did not cloak. It came with engines burning bright. It came like a lighthouse through fog. This was Concord space, a region claimed by dozens of species, a place filled with trade routes, science stations, and diplomatic centers. It had known peace for centuries. Now something new had arrived. The Concord fleet was waiting. 10 ships, not warships, but heavily armed patrol cruisers. Their hulls shimmered with defense fields. Their weapons were powered, but not aimed. They wanted to look ready, not aggressive. Captain Ryan Brooks stood on the Everest's bridge. His crew worked in silence. Every system was on standby, not because they wanted war, but because they would not run from it. Incoming transmission, said Communications Officer Dana Price. Brooks nodded. The voice of a Concord commander filled the bridge. You are entering restricted space. State your intent. Turn around or be fired upon. Brooks didn't flinch. He spoke slowly. We are responding to a distress call from this sector. We have no hostile intent, but we will defend ourselves. We are here, and we are not leaving until we know who asked for help. A pause. Then the Concord fleet began to spread out. Ships moved into a defensive formation. Weapons began to charge. Brooks raised an eyebrow. Defensive posture confirmed. Prepare countermeasures, no first strike, but lock targeting. Show them our full profile on the outer hull of the Everest. Panels shifted, cannons extended, missile bays opened, shield generators activated. The Concord ships hesitated. They had never seen a vessel like this. Some began to back away, others held position. Then a strange sound filled their sensors. Not a weapon, not a signal. It was a warning, a low, humming vibration, coming from the Everest itself, a display of power, controlled, measured. The Concorde's lead ship fired a warning shot. It missed. On purpose, it was meant to test response. The Everest did not fire back. Instead, it launched a signal drone. It flew calmly toward the Concorde ship. It carried a message, a full recording of the original mining colony's distress call. Evidence: the Concorde ship paused, scanned the drone, then received the file. For several minutes, nothing moved. Then, the Concorde fleet powered down their weapons. Slowly, one by one, the Everest remained still. Ready but silent, on the Concorde command ship, a message came through, this time from a different voice. Female, measured, diplomatic, Captain Brooks. We acknowledge your message. We recognize your response was justified. Please accept our apology. A meeting is requested. We would like to learn more about your people and your ship. Brooks turned to his crew. Stand down from combat alert. Keep all systems hot. But let them see we're not the ones who shoot first. Dana. Price smiled slightly. They blinked first. No, they listened, Brooks replied. The Concorde ships slowly moved aside, opening a path. The Everest moved forward without fear, passing between them like a glacier through a narrow channel. From the observation decks of Concorde stations, scientists, ambassadors, and travelers watched in awe. The ship seemed to defy known design. No round curves, no fragile spires, only solid lines, angled armor, silent engines. Some felt fear, others felt curiosity. A few felt respect. On one station, a child pointed at the Everest and asked, "What is that, Mother?" She replied quietly, "That is Earth. That is what they became." Inside the Concorde council chambers, urgent meetings began. Some demanded retaliation. Others warned against it. They did not fire. They did not kill. They only protected. We must understand them, not provoke them. A diplomat named Anaya from the Valari stood before the council. Her people had once known war. Now they feared it would return. We are used to species that want resources, want land, want power. But the humans, they want space. They want respect. And if we do not give it, they will take it. Not out of greed, but survival. We should not fight that. We should learn from it. And so the Concorde sent an invitation to speak, to listen, to meet aboard the Everest. Captain Brooks read the message. He nodded. Tell them we accept. Tell them to come unarmed. And tell them, we remember who fired first, but we also remember who listened. The Concorde council chamber floated in high orbit above the world of Veritas. It was shaped like a star, 5 great arms reaching out into the void. Each one belonged to a different ruling species. Inside, the air buzzed with tension. Holograms flickered above the long, curved table, images of the Everest turning in space, weapon ports glowing, engines pulsing like a living heart. It does not match any known design, said Counselor Tarek of the Varn. His scales shifted color with stress. And its energy core, it bends readings. It feels wrong. It feels alive, Ambassador Kell, now disgraced but still loud, stood near the edge of the chamber. We must act now. This is not diplomacy. This is intimidation. They do not belong here. They are not part of the Concorde. They must be removed. Counselor Lyra of the Ceruleans blinked slowly. Her voice was soft. They responded to a cry for help, one of ours. The evidence is clear. We were the ones who threatened first, and yet they held their fire. They showed power, but not cruelty. We must not confuse fear with danger. Debate burned like a storm. Species that once traded flowers now spoke of battle plans. Alliances shifted in hours. Old peace treaties were pulled apart. Then Anaya, the Valari diplomat, stood. She was young by council standards. Her skin shimmered like glass. Her voice carried weight far beyond her years. What we saw was not a fleet, not an invasion. It was one ship, one crew, and it stood against 10 of ours without firing a shot. That is not an act of war. That is an invitation to talk, to learn, to understand what kind of people can build such a thing and still hold back its fire. The chamber fell silent. In the end, the vote was held. By a narrow margin, the Concord agreed they would send a small diplomatic team to meet aboard the Everest. No weapons, no escorts, just words. Anaya was chosen to lead the mission. She studied the data all night. Every broadcast, every word spoken by Captain Ryan Brooks. She saw something in his voice, not just strength, but pain. He was not trying to impress them. He was warning them. The next morning, Anaya boarded a sleek vessel built for peace. It carried the blue and gold emblem of the Concorde. It flew toward the Everest with its lights open, its shields down. The Everest waited near a silent moon. Not hidden but still, like a great beast lying in the dark. As Anaya's ship approached, a single transmission came through. Approach cleared, welcome aboard, prepare for docking. She stepped into the airlock with her small team. There were no guards, no weapons, only translators and one historian. The door opened. They stepped into silence. The interior of the Everest was unlike anything she had seen. Metal floors shimmered with a soft pulse. Light came from invisible sources. The halls were wide, practical, clean. Two humans met them at the entrance. A woman with sharp eyes introduced herself as Naomi Brooks, chief engineer, and a tall man named Carter, pilot. Captain is waiting. This way. They walked through the ship, past engine chambers that hummed with quiet power, past memorial walls with names etched into silver plates. Anaya stopped to read one. Julia Carter, lost in the defense of Earth. We rise because she fell. Carter paused. My sister, she was a medic. She stayed behind so others could escape. That's why I'm here, why this ship exists, so no one else has to make that choice. Anaya said nothing, but she understood. The Everest was not a threat, it was a vow in the command chamber. Captain Brooks stood before a wide display of the galaxy. Stars marked with red rings, zones of known threats. Thank you for coming, he said. We don't want war, but we won't be unprepared. The galaxy is beautiful, but it's not safe, you know that. We know that, we just learned it the hard way. We're not asking to rule. We're not asking to lead, we just want to exist. Without fear, without chains. Anaya stepped forward. And what do you offer in return? Peace alone is not enough. We must know who you are before we let you in. Brooks smiled softly. Then ask, we'll answer. We have nothing to hide. We built this ship not just to fight, but to be seen, so you would know that we remember, that we stand ready, and that we are listening too, outside. The Everest stayed quiet, but now the galaxy had begun to hear, and some had begun to listen. The meeting room aboard the Everest was quiet. Captain Brooks stood by the curved window, staring into the dark between stars. Behind him, the Concorde delegation sat at a long table. Anaya spoke gently. Your message is strong, Captain, but fear lingers. Even now, not all in the Concorde agree to peace. Brooks nodded. We expected that. Old empires do not welcome new neighbors, especially ones that survived fire and returned with teeth. The conversation had gone well for hours. They had discussed trade, technology, the possibility of neutral zones, even cultural exchanges. But underneath the surface, tension moved, like a crack beneath smooth glass in another system, far from the calm voices aboard the Everest. A different plan had begun. Counselor Tarek of the Varn had not accepted peace. He had called the humans a disease, and diseases must be cured. He had gathered a fleet in secret. 20 ships, old war models. Fast hard, his message was simple. Strike now. While they are talking, before they build more, before they claim space, before they grow. He had allies, not many, but enough. Old enemies of Earth before Earth had ever left its star. Silent powers who saw the Everest as a threat to all order, and so they came from behind asteroid fields, from gas clouds, from folded space. The siege began without warning. Alarms screamed through the Everest. Naomi Brooks dropped her datapad. Multiple jumps, fast movers, they're targeting our engines. Shields active, weapons charging. Carter raced to the bridge. His voice was already barking orders. Evasive pattern Delta. Bring drones online. Protect the delegates. Seal the command deck. Captain Brooks turned from the window. His face calm, but his voice sharp. We gave them a chance. Now we show them why that matters. Outside, the spacer on the Everest lit up. Concorde ships fired volleys of plasma. Missiles spiraled through the black. The Everest held, its shields shimmered under the first barrage. Hull plates adjusted in real time. Missiles were intercepted by defense rings. Drones launched in swarms, fast, unmanned, deadly. Tempest protocol is ready. Captain, Naomi said. Awaiting your command. Brooks looked at the star map. Red markers everywhere. The enemy fleet had encircled them. Activate Tempest. No hesitation, no mercy. Disable everything. Minimal casualties if possible, but end this. Fast. With a pulse of light, the Everest became a different kind of storm. Cannons roared without sound in the void. Beams of precision fire sliced through engines, not to destroy, but to paralyze. The drones danced like silver insects, weaving between shots, tagging weak points, firing EME rounds. Enemy ships began to lose control. Their engines failed. Their weapons froze. Some drifted dead in space. Others tried to flee. Carter called out. Enemy fleet breaking formation. 3 ships down. 5 disabled. The rest are scattering. But one ship had not come to fight. It had come to kill. A stealth cruiser had slipped close during the chaos. Its target was the diplomatic chamber. Anaya saw the blast door behind her tremble. Guards raised shields, but the attack was too fast. A cutting beam pierced the corridor. Then the ceiling exploded. Elijah Carter dropped in through an emergency shaft, weapon in hand. Not today, not on this ship. His shots were clean, controlled. The attackers fell. No casualties among the delegates. Later, when the last hostile ship was disabled, Brooks stood on the bridge, watching the wreckage. He sent one message to the Concorde Council, a recording of the battle, every moment, every attack, every choice, and then his words, "We were invited to peace, we arrived in trust, and we were ambushed. We do not forget, but we do not destroy. Those who surrender, all survivors have been given medical aid. They will be returned next time. We won't be so gentle." Back in the Concorde chamber, Anaya stood before the council, her eyes full of fire. They held their fire until attacked. They protected us. They fought with control. They showed more honor than we did. If we do not change our view, we will not survive their patience. And they will not need a second ship, because one was enough. Across the stars, the message spread. Worlds replayed the footage. Children watched in silence. Captains adjusted their charts, because now they knew. The battleship Everest did not bluff. It warned, it waited, and when pushed, it became the storm. The wreckage drifted slowly. Pieces of scorched metal turned in the cold silence of space. Lights from crippled Concorde ships blinked like dying stars. The Everest stood in the center, untouched, unshaken. It did not speak. It did not chase the last fleeing vessels. It simply watched. Captain Ryan Brooks sat in his chair. He looked older. Now not in his face, but in the way he carried the silence. "Damage report," he said quietly. Naomi Brooks tapped her console. "Minor shield strain, no internal damage. All systems green, crew safe." Brooks gave a single nod. Then turned to the wide galaxy map. Systems flickered, sectors now aware. The Everest had not just defended itself. It had made a statement, not a declaration of war, but a promise. A few days later, a formal message arrived from the Concorde Council. Apologies, assurances, treaties in draft. Anaya's name was listed first. She had spoken for peace. And now she was their voice to Earth. She stood on the observation deck of her new vessel, watching the Everest through a viewing window. "They changed us without ever landing on a single world. They changed us." The Concorde voted to recognize Earth's independence in the galactic sphere. Human space was given boundaries, safe routes, full trade access, but more than that, they were given respect. The Council also passed a new law. No hostile engagement would be allowed near Earth space. Any breach would be considered a breach of peace. The message was clear. The galaxy had learned on Earth. News of the Everest's battle reached billions. People watched the footage over and over. They did not cheer loudly. They did not throw parades. They stood in silence, remembering the fires from 20 years ago and how far they had come. The Everest returned briefly to Sol System. It passed Mars, then Luna, then Earth. But it did not dock instead. It hovered in low orbit for 6 hours. Its crew allowed to send messages to families. Then it turned again. It left as quietly as it came. Because it had work to do, Brooks gave a short broadcast to the Earth Defense Command. We are not heroes. We are not conquerors. We are reminders that Earth is never alone again. That when someone cries out in fear, we are the voice in the dark that answers. The Everest is not finished because the stars are wide. And not all shadows are gone. Some called it the second age of humanity. Others called it the rise of the Outer Watch. But the name that lasted was the Age of the Guardian. Years passed. The Concord changed. Treaties grew stronger. War grew distant. But every so often, a ship near a forgotten border would blink. Just once, and see a shadow behind the stars. Sometimes it was a drone, sometimes just a glimmer. But sometimes, when danger brewed, the Everest appeared not to fire, but to remind that humanity had survived fire and carried the scars with pride. In academies across the galaxy, young captains studied the tactics of the Everest. In marketplaces, toy models of the ship sold faster than anything else. Children held them close at night, feeling safe, and in distant sectors, pirates and tyrants whispered warnings. Don't go near Earth, don't cross their lines. They don't send armies, they send one ship, and that's all they need. In time, the Everest became more than a ship, it became legend. But for those who served aboard her, it remained something far simpler. A duty, a promise kept, a name carved. In silence, and deep in the bridge, behind layers of armor and tech, sat a small wall, carved with names. Every human lost in the fires of the past, every friend, every family member, lit by soft light. It stood behind the captain's chair, so that every order given, every decision made, was made in their memory. Captain Brooks walked past it every day. He would pause, place his hand on the final name, then turn back to his post, because he knew, as did the crew, that peace was not given, it was guarded. And the Everest would guard it. For as long as the stars would burn,